Hi, Candice, Sanderson, author of The Reluctant Messenger. I wanted to share with you today a meditation experience I had at Church of Spiritual Light in Fort Myers. I was at their twice monthly Reiki and crystal bowl meditation, and which is, not unusual. I started getting messages before the actual meditation began, and this is what happened during this time. My eyes were drawn to this beautiful collage that's on the wall, and there are pictures of animals and different symbols and this beautiful symbology. But I looked directly at this one picture of the wolf, but it wasn't just the wolf that I was drawn to, it was specifically his nose. And then I looked and I saw on a shelf a bottle of hand lotion made out of rosemary. And at the same time, I heard the word alchemy. And I knew somehow all of these would be related and that eventually I would know why. I first thought maybe this would be a message I would get about scents. After seeing the wolf's nose and especially that strong scent of rosemary, the messages began. And the first message was, as you learn to fine-tune your senses, you shall tap into the divine nature of all that is. Allow this divine flow to transform you. As you tap into your divine nature, the spirit and essence of those from the angel realm come forth. Hearts open, and with the opening of the heart, the energy flow throughout the body increases. As the flow increases, the cells become enlivened. They fill with divine energy. With these words, as I looked around the room, the way the room is set up with the crystal bowls, those are located in the center, and there are cots that surround these crystal bowls. And I realized that the cots, I started having a vision, and these cots started to swell, almost like deflated balloons. And without knowing how I knew, I realized that as these cells inflated, or as these cots inflated in my mind's eye, I knew that they represented the cells in our body, as if there was this expansion that allowed for more movement between our cells, so that when we had the Reiki, which is energy healing, and the crystal bowls, which is through vibration, it allowed more room for this healing to take place. And then another message came in, allowing the energy vibrations to soften the edges of pain, soften the edges of mental discord, and allow for the balancing of energy for a full healing to occur. And at that point, I started hearing parts of the song that took me back to my childhood many years ago. This hymn, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, God in three persons, Blessed Trinity. So this started playing in the back of my mind over and over while I heard these next words. There is perfection, harmony, and a divine Trinity. There is perfect health when the connection is divine. In my mind's eye, then, the room began to change, and those cots that had swollen and looked like deflated balloons now became flower petals. And I realized as I looked throughout the room, it looked like the room had become a giant lotus flower. As the petals continued to grow, then there was another transformation, and it's like the petals on the inside that were close to where the bowl was remained stationary, while the rest of the petals started coming up until they made a perfect flower bud. Now, what's so interesting about the flower bud is two things. First of all, I expected it to be a lotus bud, but it wasn't. It was a red rosebud. But what was probably more important was the realization that we were actually the lotus petals. We had merged and transformed to create this bright red rosebud. And then I saw movement on the floor. The bowls are all, in a semicircle. But right on the floor where they are located, I saw movement, and I saw this huge taproot begin to grow downward. And, as this happened, I realized it was anchoring itself very, very deep into the center of the earth. And I was told that there was a large crystal at Earth's core, and this taproot was anchoring itself around that. And then immediately my vision shifted so I could see that beautiful rosebud in the center of the room. And it opened just a little bit, and as it did, there were these most beautiful golden flecks that began to just bubble up from its center. And they were like meandering up, and it started gaining momentum. And my vision zoomed back. And as I looked at these golden streams that were coming up, I realized that it looked just like the double helix of a DNA strand. And I knew, I had this knowing that this energy, this divine energy, came directly from the angel realm. Now, just when I thought things couldn't get stranger, they did. And I heard the phrase, Jacob's ladder. And then I remembered the Bible story about Jacob's ladder. He had a dream, and in this dream, Jacob saw this ladder that ascended from earth to heaven. And on this ladder, angels ascended and descended. So, I guess it was like a portal that opened. And as soon as I realized that, the floodgates opened. And this is what I saw, what happened here, in Fort Myers at the Church of Spiritual Light. There was this dissension. All of these angels came into the room. They were led by archangels. They descended into the room. It brought tears to my eyes. There was such a loving, compassionate feeling of peace and grace and just pure love. And plus I could feel their strength and how powerful they were. And I realized that they were here for us, all of us that were there for the meditation. And I was so overcome with emotion, tears were just streaming down my face. And then when I saw the angels, I had this epiphany that the double helix DNA strand actually was Jacob's ladder. And this is where, I see where science and spirituality come together. Jacob had this ladder. He interpreted it in his dream. He interpreted that as a ladder, yet maybe it truly was for healing to occur by the angels by way of science, by way of our DNA. Then something else happened. It's like my consciousness just drifted away. I felt like maybe I'd fallen asleep, but I didn't really think that's what had happened. And then all of a sudden, I found myself in the middle of a very vivid scene. I was on this snow-driven plain. I looked out in the distance and I saw teepees. Off to one side was a great big, this huge white buffalo. He was pawing at the snow in searching for something to graze. And then I heard in my mind's eye, maybe my mind's ear, that I had traveled back in time. And then I had another message. This is what divine healing is all about. As you open your awareness to the divinity from angels who surround you, you can step back into time and heal the wounds of the past. Simply allow and accept the Creator's divine healing as gifted by the angels of grace. And for those of you all who have followed me or read my book, you know that I've had this connection to white buffalo. But this was bringing in both the spirit of white buffalo and the angels into healing. And it was just, this was probably one of the more, it was one of the more intense meditations I've ever attended. As we participated in the healing, as the Yvette was playing the bowls, and as the Reiki masters came around and gave us Reiki, I felt more energy than I think I ever had before in any of these healings. You know, a few days before this, I had gotten a message about a new messenger appeared to me. And, you know, I couldn't help but think that this was probably related to that. When I had the new messenger, that messenger spoke about there being a newness, a freedom, a rebirth of spiritual gifts. And they also talked about time, clock time, calendar time, you know, as we know it, is an illusion. But they told me that there was an interdimensional energy connected with time that operated a lot like a current in a river. It's always guiding the river, but it's beneath the surface of awareness. And as I thought of that new messenger, and also remembering that white buffalo came through to me, I realized this was almost like deja vu. Remembered the very first experience that I ever had at Church of Spiritual Light. It was my first time to visit, and during that visit, I saw a portal open, and through this portal came a throng of angels and also ascended masters. There was a group of ancestors and also a council of elders, and they ushered in a white buffalo calf and a woman that I later found out was a white buffalo calf woman. When I think about the very first message that I received back in August of 2013, it was a message about a flower and how a flower is a flower of energy. All of this just went through my mind, and then I realized all of the aspects of my first visit to the church, all of the same aspects of my first message were all within this one meditation. We had the flower being the flower of energy. We had the portal that opened with white buffalo coming in again, also the angels coming in. And I realized all of this was like coming together in divine order. You know, first was that messenger, that new messenger that had come 3 days before. But the vision of Jacob's ladder and the DNA, and, you know, I kept realizing that, you know, I was so hesitant to write my book, The Reluctant Messenger, and I was certainly very reluctant about it. And over several months, I've been getting these nudges that I need to pick up the pen and write another book. And like the first book, this one has been guided also. And I know now that the reason I've had all of these visions lately with angels is that's what the next book needs to be about. I will be writing about the experiences of angels. But I realized with this meditation that I truly had come full circle. I felt like one of the hobbits, you know, in their movie, or maybe it was a book, I don't know, There and Back Again, that I had traveled there and back again, but I was exactly where I needed to be. I am open to spirit. I am open to hear the messages. I'm open to listen to the words of the new messenger who had just arrived. I feel that there's divinity and sacredness that I'm able to tap into at sacred places like Church of Spiritual Light, and all of that will help guide me as I write the next book. So thank you for listening, and it's time for me to pick up the pen again, so I think that's what I'll do. Please subscribe below if you would like, and you can also check that little bell that will notify you when I have future videos that I upload. Thank you. Bye-bye.